Hi, welcome to the You Matter Self-Care Summit for Working Mums. And today we're with Katie Kahvo. So without further ado, I'll pass you on to Katie and see what she's got to talk about today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here today. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit more about me. I am Katie, and I am a life coach for entrepreneurial moms, and I help shift them from chaos to calm. And with two little kids, I have a 4-year-old and a 7-month-old. I totally get what it's like to try and work with kids, especially right now when we are all home in the same environment. Excuse me, but I do this by working with these women to help them build the confidence and find clarity in what they actually want to be doing and how they want to be spending their time. I also am a partner at Rise Up, and that's an international platform where we bring together people for summits sort of like this. We run events, and it's super exciting. So I'm a big supporter of community and supporting women. So I love summits like this. So thank you so much, Debbie, for having me on today. And just a little bit of background about me. I'm actually trained as a holistic nutritionist, and I worked for years supporting women in their health and wellness, but I did this using food. And after a few years of doing this in various different niches, it became very clear to me that food is not the issue for people. The issue is that they tend to be really overstressed, really overwhelmed, which therefore we turn to food. And they're also really unclear on what they want. They lack clarity and confidence in who they really are and what they really valued. So as my appointments with my clients started to shift and we started to talk less and less about food and more about the mental and emotional wellness of them, I switched out of the nutrition world and into life coaching, as this felt more really at the core of what I was trying to help people with. And as I was making these transitions and realizations, I was also going through some of my own shifts and realized just how much personal growth that I was going through in the last few years of this as well. So this really felt like the right match for me, and that's how I got into life coaching. People always ask me that, so there you go. Today I wanted to talk about habits for self-care, and before we get started though, I wanted to talk a little bit more about my approach to self-care and kind of my thoughts on that. So I define self-care as something intentional, and that's really key, intentional that feels good. And it's really that simple. So you want to do something that makes you feel good so that you can find happiness. It can be something that refuels you, energizes you, calms you. And I want to make it clear as well that this can be something that you do alone. And I think that self-care is often thought of as doing by yourself. But it can also be something that you do with your kids or with your family or with other people. And that's why I make my definition as something intentional that feels good. So if that means, going for a bike ride with your kids, if that is something that you did intentionally and it feels great and you enjoy doing it, then that can be your self-care. All right. That's my definition of it. I know not everyone agrees with me, but it's really about finding something that brings you joy and brings you happiness and that keeps that tank a little bit full. So self-care is a challenge for so many of us, including myself some days. But there's a million reasons why we don't participate in self-care. Or you could say it's simply caring for oneself. We say there isn't enough time. A lot of us don't even honestly know what to do. So we're going to talk a little bit about that more later. We also feel selfish sometimes about taking self-care, is what I hear from a lot of women. And we just don't know what to do. We don't feel right about this whole thing about self-care. So there will always be a reason. And so often at the core of it, it's because we don't understand our own worth. We don't understand the importance, but also the massive impact of caring for ourselves. But it's not only about caring for ourselves, but the impact that it has on those around us, our family members and our friends and our coworkers. So once the kids' needs are their basic needs are met, so like they have clean clothes on, they're fed, they have water, something to drink, and hopefully they're well rested. After that, you come first. You're number one. And then your spouse, and then your kids. And here's the thing. If you don't care for yourself, you can't effectively care for them. You know that if you don't get enough sleep, you're not the same person as you might be if you were well rested. You know that if you're hungry, you're not in the same mood and at the same capacity to care for others or to get along with others or to have the patience and the calmness that you would if you had like a good nourishing meal, right? So I don't want you to get to a point where you burn out or you get sick, because this affects our immune systems as well. I often hear about people injuring themselves, which is a strange one, but whether they break a leg or break an arm or something like that, I hear about that very, very often when we don't take the time to slow down and take care of ourselves. Also, your kids know when you're stressed out. Our kids are very intuitive, they're very smart, and they're pretty sensitive to these things. So something to think about is looking back at their childhood, how do you want them to reflect on it? Do you want them to think that we had everything we needed, but mom was always on the go, she was always rushing around, and I could tell that she felt really stressed out trying to support us all in all the ways, right? Doing it all. Or do you want them to look back and think, oh, we had so much fun. There's so much happiness and goofiness and just joy in our household. The house was always a mess, but we laughed and we played and we had a good time, right? And it might not be that black and white, but it is something that I would encourage you to think about a little bit. My clients who are really struggling with putting themselves first, I often get them to reflect on this question. What did you want to teach your kids? What values do you want them to think are important, right? And while you think about that, I'm going to have a glass of water. So do you want to teach them that they're worthy? That they can say no? That they can have fun? That it's okay for them to let go and shift their expectations, even if it's last minute? That it's okay for them to put themselves first? Maybe ask for a timeout when things get overwhelming? That it's okay for them to nourish their body and their mind through movement, healthy food, connection with friends, sitting for 10 minutes and enjoying a hot cup of coffee, maybe not for your kids, but whatever it is that lights them up, right? I recommend that if this is you and you have a lot of mom guilt going on around putting yourself first, and this is a big struggle for you, maybe you feel selfish or guilty around it, I want you to really take some time and just brainstorm about what do you want your kids to learn, right? What do you want to be teaching your kids? How do you want them to feel? And kids are going to learn from your actions far better than they are going to accept your words, right? So you can tell them that healthy eating and movement, and it's okay if you don't want to do that. You can just say no. But if you're not doing it, it's not going to feel as honest and as trustworthy. So once you get clear on this, then you can start to incorporate these things into your life and showing them how it can be done. So role modeling these behaviors is really, really, really important in their learning. And these things will also be supporting you. So you'll not only feel more energized and fueled by it, but your cup will not need to be filled as frequently, which will be really, really wonderful. So yeah, sometimes when my clients are really struggling with this and we have so much resistance around this, I feel like, and I'm not entirely sure why. It can vary person to person. But like I said, at the core of it, we don't value ourselves often. And if that's the case, then think about it as if we're just doing this for our kids then, because sometimes that's easier to wrap our heads around, right? We often do most things for our kids, but really it will benefit us all. mean, imagine how different your life would be if you felt calm and confident and you had enough energy to get through the day without, a few cups of coffee. How would that change your life? How would that change your relationships with yourself, with your spouse, and with your kids? Here's a hint. Nobody likes grumpy coworkers, right? So this is where our habits come in. Habits are a really helpful approach to self-care for moms, especially, I think, because habits are something that we often do subconsciously. And as a mom of 2 little kids, I know how much appreciation there is to having less to think about, right? We don't need any more stuff to do. So habits are a really, really good way to implement self-care. When you create a new habit, it eventually becomes something that's really unconscious and a part of our regular routine without us even thinking about it. So as per Google, the definition of habits are a settled or regular tendency or practice, especially one that is hard to give up. So let me say that again. A settled or regular tendency or practice, especially one that is hard to give up. And just touching quickly on the end part of that, one that is hard to give up. So some people will actually argue that you can't get rid of habits, but you have to replace them. So we all have habits, and if there's some that I'm going to mention a few in a little bit, and if there's some that you think, oh, well, I already have a habit of doing this a different way, or I just approach it in, let's say sleep. So your habit is right now to go to bed at midnight or to do a bunch of work before you go to bed. You're not going to be able to delete that habit, but you can replace it with a better habit. And we will talk about that in a few minutes. So like I said, we all have them. They can either add to your life and increase your energy and make you feel great, or they can take away that energy and they can kind of drain us and keep us feeling lethargic and unmotivated and kind of miserable. So we want to focus on the ones that energize us, that fill up our cup and really become a great source of self-care. Now, you might be thinking, Katie, you told us just a few minutes ago that the definition of self-care was doing something intentional. So how can a habit be self-care when it is subconscious, right? So let me explain. We all have habits, but when we can approach it from bringing new awareness to what they are, we may not realize which ones are fueling us and which ones are draining us. So being intentional, like I said, that's the key part, in the aspect that we start to bring this awareness to the things that we what we are doing, and then we can choose which ones we would like to keep and which ones we would like to replace. So once we have a better understanding and awareness around them, excuse me, we can create the routine that we know will feel us better, right? So in creating new routines, habits are then formed, and then we start to do them in an unconscious way. So you are doing them intentionally, but eventually they will become unconscious. So you have to have that intentionality at the beginning in order to create that habit. Hopefully that makes sense. All right. All right. So habits are a really, really wonderful tool to rely on, especially in times where we feel like we've lost control. Motherhood can often feel that way. So can a pandemic, right? So it's a wonderful way for really regaining your power and stepping back into that life that you want. So if you're feeling super frazzled and out of control, and like I said, maybe your energy is low, you're just not feeling the way that you want to, I strongly encourage you to take a step back. I'm always telling my clients and community that we have to slow down in order to speed up, right? You have to give yourself time for reflection in order to see where you're going or where you want to be going. We often turn outward when we feel out of control and we just try and like grasp onto anything. There's a new freebie coming up. Oh, well, let me try that. Or this person said I should do this. Or, I should maybe be coloring more, or whatever it happens to be. We're grasping outward for anything that might help us, right? Maybe here ensuring that the laundry is folded a particular way. We look for control in other ways as well. So instead, we would find a lot more ease and security and calmness when we turn inward and start bringing awareness to our thoughts and our actions, our expectations, and our habits. This is what will return the control to us in a really impactful way. So, habits can be something that you do physically. So they can be something like brushing your teeth, checking your phone every 5 minutes or more, participating in regular movement, healthy eating, that sort of thing. They can also be mental and emotional. So are you more reactive to situations than not? When you're faced with something new, do the negative voices and fear take over? Do you allow your go-to phrases to rule? So things like, I don't have time for that. Or, I don't know. How am I supposed to know that? What am I going to do? I have to make a decision. Maybe it's more like, of course that would happen to me. It's just another thing to add on to the list of bad things that happen to me, right? Or maybe you say, I got this. I can do this. All right, let's go. So through this quarantine, I've actually become more aware of some of my habits. I've noticed that I'm always offering to help people, regardless if I have time or not. I'm also constantly inviting people to join in on things. So inherently, these are not bad habits. The problem with it is that I overdo it. So I book my schedule in so tight with other people's stuff instead of my own. So being in this quarantine has really forced me to slow down, like all of us, I'm sure, because my time is very, very limited. I have myself and my husband are both trying to work from home with, like I said, 2 little kids and 2 little kids that need a lot of supervision. And so I have had to get way more clear on my priorities. And I'm learning to switch these habits a little bit and pause before offering to help people, which is a lot easier to do when you're on the computer because you have a backspace button. So even if I've typed it all out, because that's my habit, I just start deleting it. And we aren't able to hang out with people, right? So it's got me to stop and really think, do I actually want to hang out with this person? Or am I just offering to hang out because I feel like they need something? I'm just trying to help them and putting their needs before my own. These are really key habit shifts that I will most definitely be taking with me as we shift out of this pandemic. So although this might seem like a really strange time, it's actually a really amazing time to be tapping into our habits and bringing awareness to them. And if you need an excuse to change things up, this is a wonderful one. Now is the time for that. So when we look at successful people, and in whatever way that you define that, so whether that's money, whether that's people who are just living a life that they really love and are passionate about it, and success can be defined in many different ways, but when we look at successful people, they often have established habits which are essential in allowing them to achieve and maintain their success. And I think the maintenance part is a really, really big thing. Another reason why I got out of nutrition is because people are looking for quick fixes, and that's not something that I support really or believe in. So if we can do things that allow us to show up consistently and do it for a long term, then I'm on board. And habits is definitely one of those things. All right, 1 second. I apologize. It's first thing in the morning here, and my voice is not quite warmed up the way I would like it to be. So there are quite a few habits that people talk about for success, but today I've pulled out 5 that I think are really most beneficial for positive self-care and are really, really simple. Because if we already have a lot going on, like I said, if we're busy trying to figure out this new routine that we're in, we don't always like to add too much more. So I pulled out some that are very, very simple and can, with some minor adjustments, can be incorporated into your life. And that's really my approach to all things that I do. They need to be practical, otherwise there's no point, right? So this first one you've heard before, I'm sure, and it might seem really obvious, but let me explain a little bit more about how we can make it work in a practical sense. So number 1, movement. If you like lifting weights, then you can do that. If you like yoga, you can do that. But when it comes to movement, it's really that simple. Notice that I didn't say exercise. I said a movement, and that means moving your body. So when you get into a regular habit of moving, it's a really, really super fast way to switch up your energy. If you're feeling really low on energy, if you're feeling sluggish, if you're feeling sad, like if your moods are just low, which I know a lot of us are on this emotional roller coaster right now, I really encourage you to get up and get moving. And like I said, if you want to lift weights, that's wonderful. If you want to do an exercise class online, that's wonderful. Pick something that suits you. So if you're like me and you've got kids running around, which I apologize, you can probably hear, that might not be possible to stop and do a class like that in the way that you want to. So maybe instead you go for a walk, or maybe you have a dance party, which is one of my favorites. Lately, whenever I start to lose my patience, I can feel myself getting worked up. We've been resorting to dance parties. So I will pull out my phone and pull up YouTube with a fun song, and we dance around the room, and we have a dance party. And we usually, by the end, we're all dancing, and we all feel a lot better by the end. So this is a great thing to use for self-care, right? When it comes to movement, I also want you to remember, and I mentioned this at the beginning, but I want to bring it up again, that my definition of self-care is doing something that is intentional, that feels good. Again, I never said that you have to do it on your own. So self-care, when it comes to movement, can be a dance party with your kids. If that's something that you enjoy, if that's something that you stop and intentionally do, then do that. Right? It can be a dance party in the kitchen while you're making dinner or first thing in the morning to get you guys started. Keep it simple. The simpler you keep your habits, the far more likely that's going to be helpful, the far more likely that you're going to do it, and that it's going to actually develop into a habit. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. So number 2 is alone time. So if you've got kids, you might be thinking that I'm crazy, but hear me out. Time to ourselves is one of the most important things that I can think of that we do, that we should do. I don't like to use the word should, that let's say we could be doing. I talk often with my community and with my clients about reconnecting back in with yourself, right? So, and I talked about that a little bit earlier as well, that we often turn outward, grasping onto things. It's really important that we turn back in and reconnect with yourself. We often move through life, like until recently, we move through life very quickly. We don't do things typically with a lot of intention. We generally just wake up, we jump on our phones before we're even out of bed. Then, the kids are out, we go and have breakfast, and we just go through the steps of our day, and we go. We really run around, we're attending to everyone else's needs, and we go nonstop until the evening where, maybe you lay down on the couch and pop on the TV before heading to bed. No judgment. I do that too sometimes. But what ends up happening is we go to bed with our minds still swirling, and oftentimes we have trouble sleeping because, we wake up the next day and we just carry on. We start over again and we just keep doing the same thing. So we don't give ourselves time to sit and decompress and let our thoughts really process and work their way through. So taking even just a few minutes to ourselves each day, and it doesn't matter when, if you want to do it first thing in the morning, if you want to do it during or after lunch, if you want to do it before bed, which is when I prefer to do it, it really allows our bodies and our minds, even our nervous systems, to just chill out of it and to relax, right? It allows you to sit with yourself and bring awareness to yourself. If you never spend time with just you, it's very, very likely that you're going to forget who you are. You're going to lose that connection with yourself. And it's important that we keep a relationship with ourselves. So take a few minutes today, I encourage you, and just sit with yourself. You can close your eyes, you can just breathe, you can notice, but there's no need to change anything. And I think that's really important. There's no need to change anything, but start to notice and just bring awareness to, how does your body feel? is every time you sit down and do this, is your jaw clenched? Are your shoulders tight? Or maybe they're up here? How does your body feel? Like I said, you don't have to change it. It's just something to notice and bring awareness to. Something else you can do is, where does your brain go? Are you having the same racing thoughts every time you do this? Are there certain topics that continually come up? Right? So spending this time simply learning about yourself, building awareness with yourself. You might meditate. You might go for a walk in silence, so like without headset on. That's important. Or maybe you sit down and you have a notebook that you start journaling in. This is also a really, really, really great time to do a check-in with yourself and your life. So this might be something that you do like once a week or once a month. It doesn't need to be every single day, but you can incorporate it into your alone time. So how are things going? Right? Do you ever just sit down and ask yourself that? Are there any shifts that you'd like to make? How does your day-to-day life reflect your long-term vision? So if you haven't created a vision for yourself, do that. First and foremost, do that. Shoot me a message on Instagram or Facebook and I can help walk you through it, because that's a whole nother topic. But I really, really believe in the power of having a vision. Because when you're clear on where you're going and what you want in life, you can check in, and you can check in with your future self and ensure that you're on the right track, and you can make some tweaks on where they're needed, right? So this alone time, it might be 5 minutes, it might be an hour. It doesn't matter how long it is. It just matters that you do it, that you make time for it. So like I said, if you've got kids running around and you think this is impossible, it's not. Like, just do it like 5 minutes. You can even be sitting in bed in your pajamas. Just, you can have the lights out. Like, your husband doesn't even need to know, but just sit there for a few minutes or lay there before you go to bed and just do a check-in with yourself. Okay. And just bring that awareness to, again, how your body feels, where your mind's kind of at and where it's going, right? You'll start to notice patterns. All right. Number 3 is having firm boundaries. Do you know when to say no? Do you, like myself, have this habit of constantly needing to help people and constantly saying yes and not putting boundaries in to really protect yourself and to put your things, put your needs first? Because sometimes we forget that. Do you know when to say yes? When someone offers to help you, do you say no because you don't want to inconvenience them? I do that. Or do you say, yeah, thank you. Thank you for offering to help. Yeah, you can do that. Do you know when to let others' opinions in and when to block them out? What things in your life are you absolutely non-negotiable? You have very, very firm boundaries around. Because having these really firm boundaries around your values and the things that are important to you, how you spend your time, your thoughts, others' thoughts, plus maybe who you allow into your space, can really make a world of a difference in your life. This is a topic really all on its own, so I'm not going to dive too much into it today. But I encourage you to reflect on where your boundaries are, or maybe where they need to be, and watch things really start to shift in your life. So like I mentioned earlier, this pandemic is the perfect excuse to be creating new boundaries, breaking ties with people who just aren't supporting you or aren't the right fit for the life that you're striving for. All right. Okay, number 4 is sleep. And with a 4-year-old and a 7-month-old, believe me, I totally get that sleep isn't always easy to come by. However, sleep is one of those things that I think is very, very commonly missed or overlooked. And especially for self-care, I think is very, very important. It's a very, very important piece of our health and well-being. Like I said earlier, I do have a background in holistic nutrition, so sleep is something that is very, very important when it comes to our health and that we learned in school. and that I used to practice with my clients. So, it's really the foundation for so much of our health, including our hormones, including our energy levels, which is connected to our hormones, including our moods, our ability to think clearly and focus, our body's ability to detoxify and repair. There's so much that happens when we're sleeping. And if we're not getting enough sleep, these things cannot properly happen. Okay, so if going to bed is something that you really struggle with, then I encourage you to set a timer as a reminder for when you like to go to bed. I have this on, I have a Fitbit, so it tells me there. I also have one set on my phone. So if I ignore one, the other one will go off. Maybe you tell your spouse or whoever else is around at the time where you would like to go to bed that you're starting this new thing, so that they can help support you and they aren't totally surprised and trying to talk you out of it when you're starting to go to bed maybe a little bit earlier than normal. So this is definitely one of those things where we need to have those really firm boundaries in place. Sleep is super, super important. I recommend like 7 to 8 hours is ideal. In saying that, everyone is a little bit different. So if you're like, I do really well in 6 hours and I'm okay with that, and you feel good, then go ahead. That's fine too. I do think there's a little bit of flexibility in it, but ideally 7 to 8 hours. And the easiest way to do that is to figure out what time you want to get up and then count back. And that's the time you need to start going to bed. Okay, so that's number 4. Number 5, the last one, is connection with others. So as humans, we need connection. And whether you are an introvert or an extrovert or something in the middle, it doesn't matter. This current time that we're in as well really, really amplifies this one. And even my husband, who is a huge introvert, is thinking that it might be okay to see people again. As human beings, we really do need connection with others. So setting up regular interactions with humans, whether it's a coffee date, whether it's a play date, whether it's a social distancing walk or phone call, we need connection. So making this into a habit, maybe you pick a day and a time where you always connect with someone. It could be the same person, or it could just be your connection time where you reach out to whoever you feel like socializing with at that time. And then, depending on whether you are an introvert or an extrovert will depend on how often that you feel like you need to do this. But connecting with others is a really, really, for me especially, I'm a bit of an extrovert, so connecting with others is one of my biggest forms of self-care because it really energizes me and just makes me feel great. So the more that you can do this, the better for some of us. Some of us just need it like, maybe every other week. Whatever works best for you, but connection with others is a really, really great habit to start getting in a routine for, in a habit for self-care. Okay, so just quickly before we wrap up, I want to talk a little bit about implementing this. So I don't want to overwhelm you. A lot of the work I do with my clients, they often say how simple it is, how I can break it down and make it really, really easy for them and simplify things. And I think that's really, really important. I think one of the issues with people trying to do new things is that we overthink it. We make it way more complicated than it needs to be. So simple, simple, simple is ideal. So I just rhymed off 5 new habits that you could do. Movement, alone time, firm boundaries, sleep, and connection with others. So if you're like, I don't have time to do all those things or to look at them in detail, pick one. I don't even recommend that you do them all at once. Pick one. So that when you're creating a new habit, it's really, really essential that we start simple. Like I said, don't overthink it, and also remember that they can actually overlap. So you can go for a walk with a friend, therefore you're getting connection and movement all at the same time, right? You can incorporate quiet time right before you go to bed. So it's part of your nightly routine, and then you're still getting to bed in a reasonable time, and you're probably going to fall asleep a lot faster and have a better quality sleep when you give your body and your mind time to just calm down, right? So you can overlap them as well. But I want you to start in the smallest possible step that you can think of. Something else I talk a lot about with my clients is people often go from A to Z. We're here and we think, okay, this is my goal. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to start tomorrow, and I'm just going to go all in. I'm going to do it. It doesn't work. Look at New Year's resolutions. It doesn't work. Okay. So it's really, really essential that we go from A to B and B to C, and you can add on slowly that way. It's much more effective for consistency and long-term maintenance. Okay. So the key in all of this is really, really important that we pick something that we know we can accomplish at the beginning. Really, really important that we pick something that you know you can accomplish. And that might seem strange, but when you pick something that you know you can follow through on, this is how you build a trusting relationship with yourself, right? This is something that then we can continue to grow through, and we can add on bigger tasks as we go. But if you pick something that you don't think can be accomplished, or you're like, this is kind of pushing me on the edge, and then you don't succeed in it, you're not likely to continue. That trust is going to be broken, and we're going to have more proof that we can't do it. And we already have lots of proof that we start things and don't finish them, or don't have the results that we intended on, right? That happens all the time. We don't need any more proof that that's the case. We need to create proof that we can do it, that we can pick something and follow through and succeed in it. We need to build that trust with ourselves, okay? So picking something that's attainable allows us to believe in ourselves. It allows us to build confidence. And like I said, it gives us the proof that it can be done. Once you've done that, then you can add on the next step, and you can take it that one step farther. And doing it this way will get you all the way to your end goal much better, okay? Our struggle with developing new habits is often that we are picking things that aren't easily implemented into our current day, and that are either too big or too complex. So simple, 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 simple. Okay? It's important that we keep putting ourselves into these situations that will support us in our success. And it's important to remember that perfection is never the goal. If you fall off track, focus simply on getting back on. So it's never going to be perfect, because life happens. We have so much proof of that right now. Things change all the time, and that's okay. It's important really about how you react or act to it, what you do when you fall off. So if you're beating yourself up and just throwing in the towel and being like, oh, there I go, I did it again, I can't do this, I mean, you're going to stay stuck there. You're not going to move forward. If you can pick yourself up, brush yourself off, and try again at the next opportunity, which is usually right away, or within the next 24 hours for sure, you'll move ahead so much better and so much faster. And that's just part of life. You will have to do this, right? So having that expectation that at some point you're going to be challenged with showing up and doing this, and knowing that you're going to keep pushing through, and that you'll be good. You'll be good. All right. So I hope that you found that useful and interesting, and took away a few tidbits. If you have any questions about it, if you want to learn more, if you want some support in working through this, or want to learn more about vision creating to figure out even what habits would be ideal for you as an individual, I really encourage you to reach out to me. You can follow me on Instagram at Kahvo. My last name is Kahvo. Or you can come join my community on Facebook, True You with Katie. And we have actually a lot going on. My birthday is this week, so we are celebrating this month. And I thought that we could all use a little more fun and excitement and support this month. So I have loads of speakers and things set up in my community at True You with Katie on Facebook. So come and join us. And yeah, I look forward to chatting with you. Thank you so much, everyone.